Okay, now we've got everything sorted out. I just love the finickiness of Zoom. But good afternoon, everyone. It's 8:07 now, New Zealand time in the evening. I have just chugged down an an espresso, a shot of espresso. I think Richard, you're also having an espresso because it's something like 4 a.m. in the morning there. Um, Yes, indeed. Yep. And I'm actually just going to start by telling you a little bit about espresso. You may have heard this before, but it's a wonderful. Actually, I'll just use this one. It's not espresso. We'll do Pepsi Max just for a little bit of a change. It's like a little bit of a metaphor for curation and actually just about everything. I am reluctantly drinking this because I just feel like I need a shot of caffeine. But I'm drinking all of this tin in order to get the caffeine, and it'd be really nice for me just at the moment if I could have just got and just had the caffeine without having to drink this. Um, and it's the same with coffee, except you have to have the espresso in your coffee to get the caffeine, but you get all of this other stuff in there as well. And that's like a metaphor of how we can curate all sorts of things to get down to the good stuff. I could take a caffeine pill. I could have a very short shot of espresso, which I have done, or I could have to drink this whole tin. So this is actually largely about curating TOC in a good way. It doesn't mean we chuck out all the other stuff, but it's in a good way. Right. Now, um, so welcome to the JET, the very, very first JET live session. JET stands for Just Enough TOC. And if I push the right button here, just in case anyone is in the wrong place, this is not about the table of contents. This is about the theory of constraints, right? It really annoys me when I start talking about TOC and people fire out Word and show me how to insert a table of contents. I don't know how to do that, but I do know how to do theory constraints. And what we're doing is we're trying to find that little bit of the espresso, or ideally the caffeine that's in the theory of constraints. Because my theory is that it's such a huge body of knowledge that it kind of turns a lot of people away from using it who could be using it. And I would actually, the reason I'm doing this is I think that's a crime against humanity. And I would love if there's some way, I don't know what will happen, how this will evolve, or whether it will just die a natural death. I'd love some of your help to try and get a little bit more TOC going in the world. Now, if you're brand new to TOC and you're going, oh, I don't know much about this, the good thing is you don't have to learn all of it. We're just going to show you a little bit of just enough of it. And coming up, I'm going to show you three of my books that will help you get part way there. And if you want to read them, don't buy them. Just send me a message on LinkedIn or on email, and I'll get back to you. Okay, so now if you happen to be slightly more advanced, this is my effectively what I'm sharing here is my journey with TOC, where I went masses of it, and then I stopped consuming anything new about it. I forgot quite a lot of it, uh, and then occasionally, like just earlier this week, I went back to necessary but not sufficient because I knew there was something in there that I wanted to have a look at, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was. And I found it. I was able to retrieve it because part of my brain knew it was there. But most of the time, I use effectively the five parts of TOC that I'm just going to talk about here. I think it's quite common that people do this. You don't have to know everything. You just have to be good at parts of it. And there's some other stuff I'm going to cover, which I think is really rounds it out. So I'm going to start with a metaphor. Now, this is actually a map of where I live. Might not look like it, but I'm using this to illustrate the coastline problem. So now, if you can imagine Captain James Cook, uh, 250, 300 years ago, whenever it was, sailing around, he was the first person to map out New Zealand. Definitely the first European. I think he was the first person to actually map it out. And what he did is he sailed around it. But there are two islands, and I don't think initially he went through the strait that's in the middle of them, and he missed out lots of bits. But he would have gone around, and he got a pretty good representation of the shape of it. And if you would have asked him roughly what the coastline was, and in that stage, I imagine he was measuring in miles or bigger units even. He would have taken something like this, taken those black lines, done a little bit of generosity to bump out the raw measure he's come up with and come up with some measure of how big the coastline was. That just, just makes sense. But there's a problem with coastlines, which I'm sure you're all aware of, which is that's, by the way, see that little blue dot? That's where I am now. Um, or more accurate, that's where I was this morning when I printed that off, and it's still where I am now. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and you'll see here that as we zoom in and get more closer, and we start measuring and say quarter miles. I don't know what people would measure the coastline in these days. You see here, suddenly there's a lot more coastline appears. And this little bit here is that's the Rabbit Island main beach. That's where I go swimming in the summer and occasionally in the winter. And you can see that that's a straight line on the outside, but look at all the jagged bits on the inside. If you were to measure that in miles, all of that little detail would disappear. You wouldn't care about it. But when you zoom in more and more and more, it adds more and more detail. So this is the coastline problem. There is actually no actual length. It depends on whether you're measuring with a meter stick or whether you're measuring in kilometers from a satellite. Okay? This is, of course, a metaphor. Here's another little picture of it there. But this is the problem with every kind of domain or body of knowledge that we've all gone and looked at. This is definitely true for theory of constraints. It's definitely true of agile, which is that every single body of knowledge, it grows and grows and grows bigger and bigger and bigger with every zig and every zag and every edge case and every nook and every cranny and every little curve in the coastline. It just grows bigger and bigger. And yet the essence of it, which we might, if we were to mix metaphors, call the espresso or even the caffeine, it stays the same. Okay, that's why if you saw my bookshelf over there, you would see dozens of books I've acquired over the last 25, 30 years that are all about the theory of constraints and a whole lot of other related things. And yet the essence of it hasn't really changed. A lot of the details have. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing that we've added more details. It's clearly a really good thing. Bodies of knowledge grow. But at the end of the day, if you want to use it just in an everyday circumstance, the essence doesn't change. Okay, so that's the first point. Now, that actually, ChatGTP is, forgive my language, is a real arsehole because it makes me fatter whenever it takes my image than I actually am in real life. And I find it very offensive. And it would be really nice if some of you put in the chat there. Yes, it does make you look a lot fatter than you do now on the screen. But that's not the point of this. The Pringles effect. Now, about 10, 12 years ago, I stopped learning agile stuff, even though I've been doing it since 2002, 2003. I stopped reading any more theory of constraint stuff, even though I've been doing that since about 96. And the reason was I suddenly woke up one day, I go, oh my God, all of this extra new knowledge I'm getting, I find it really, 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 really interesting. But it's like eating Pringles. The first two or three taste good, but then afterwards you keep eating them and eating them and eating them and eating them. And they add no extra taste value to you and they add no extra calories. So I stopped learning those things. I unsubscribed from all the blogs. I stopped buying books. I started watching cat videos instead on YouTube. And I found a really interesting thing is that I forgot a lot of the stuff that had previously interested me. But at the same time, it was almost like I understood it a lot better. Without all the details and the constant new stuff, which was actually tweaks and rehashes of the old stuff, I actually started to get a lot more clarity. And I was, maybe this is a bold word to say, and I think wisdom around using this because I had less knowledge and the passages of time left the stuff that was the most important. And that when I look back was the kind of the point where I made that decision, where a while after everything started making more sense. Okay, so I hope that's just a so what we got here is the this coastline problem that it keeps getting bigger and bigger, which is a bit like just eating more and more and more Pringles for no value. But then when you stop, the essence is still there. Now you can suddenly see the essence a lot easier. Okay. Right. Now, again, I don't think I'm quite that fat, but ChatGTP seems to. Anyway, ignore that there. There's this book called Micro Mastery. And the idea from the book, I'll just tell you the story he starts it with, is that he had a friend who was a chef. And this guy that was really interested, Robert Twigger, was really, really, really interested in cooking. And he just goes, "Oh, wow, I'd love to learn all about cooking, all about cooking." And then his friend said to him, "Well, you could learn everything, but why don't you just learn to make an omelette really well?" And this book is about micro mastering. It's mastering one tiny little bit of a domain like cooking or Japanese calligraphy and narrowing it down to one little bit of it that you can get good at. Now, I love this, and I'm never, ever, ever going to do anything like that. That's a little too extreme for me. I think it made him very happy. And today, as I was putting my slides together, I actually went out and I paid someone to make an omelette for me because that would actually make me much happier, much more quickly. But if you take the idea here of a big body of knowledge and just choosing one area to get good at, you actually get good at a whole lot of other things around it. So that's kind of where we're getting to. That is a sort of like a metaphor of what we're trying to do. So a form of micro mastery, except maybe not as he did it for 39 different things. Uh, we're just going to do it for one big amazing thing. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce JET. JET. Just enough theory of constraints. Okay. We're going to go 5 bits here. And these 5 bits are me looking back going, what 5 bits of the theory of constraints have I kind of, what was the essence of it? For me, now it's quite possible. So I can see Richard here in my top left-hand corner of the grid. Richard, uh, the stuff he does, critical chain project management stuff, they're not in my top 5 here for just enough TOC. They may well be with the people he's dealing with. You might get other people who, like my friend Graham, that can't be here today, but he's an expert in throughput accounting. So he'd probably, I imagine here, we discussed it this afternoon, I imagine he'd put a little bit on throughput accounting. And I'm conscious, Ben, you should add throughput accounting to your list as well. I see you up there on the list. Um, these things are just, these are the top 5 for mine, and everyone will have their own view of all of this, but I reckon it's a pretty good starter. And add another bastardized metaphor here. If we were baking bread, this would be reasonably good yeast or sourdough starter to be with the modern times. Okay, so let me just run through them quickly, and I'm going to go through each. But my purpose here isn't to teach you these because it's quite likely, given who you all are here on the list, that you probably know bits of these. And I'm just trying to go, hey, maybe other people out there might just need to know a little bit about each of these, the 101 version of each. And I reckon that will make the world a better place. So, jetitude is jet and attitude put together. And I think that's called a portmanteau, but it could be something entirely different. But it's jetitude. It's the attitude here that goes behind this. It's the mindset and the thinking. And for me, this is the bit that's the most difficult to tie down. But I actually think it's probably the most important because I think understanding and learning the theory of constraints over the years has messed with my brain, and it's mostly around this attitude stuff, the worldview that comes with it. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit more into detail on that. Um, Number 2, productivity 101. Now, this is just basic bottleneck theory and more importantly, bottleneck management. Okay, so everyone that thinks of the theory of constraints that's heard a little bit about it will go, well, once upon a time they used to go, oh, that was the one with the Herbie thing, and it was about bottlenecks. So that would be the most essential part, I guess, for most people of the theory of constraints. So notice I put 101 there. This is like a course, the equivalent that you might do at university in the first year, where you learn quite a lot about bottleneck management, and that's pretty cool. But you haven't gone on and got your master's degree. Okay. Genius 101. Now, this is a bit bold of me, but I reckon the most important bit in all of the theory of constraints is clouds, evaporating clouds. I honestly think that if I was left with one, that maybe wouldn't be any good to me on a desert island. Um, Swim or don't swim, I don't know. But I think it is the most important tool and the most underestimated of all of the tools. And I've known a lot of people who've done theory constraints to become masters of it, who come back and go, yeah, that's the one that actually, that's the one that kind of makes you into a minor genius. The fourth one is what I'm calling Moonshots 101, where we try and do ambitious things. And I've stolen, from what I can remember of it, the name Ambitious Target Tables from the TOC for Education that was around and about once a long time ago, where they took TOC and taught some of it to kids. And I think they had clouds in it and ambitious target table. This would be a replacement for this would be the easy version of the prerequisite tree. And then the fifth one is everyday evolution. And you might think of this as if you take the word bottleneck and just use the word in the way that most people think of it, the one thing that's kind of blocking you most at the moment. This is just an iterative loop of going through and going and debottlenecking. It's like a loop of what's next, what's next, what's next, and always just focusing in on the one thing that we should be looking at the moment, and that lifts us up. Right now, and there's some more to come after that, but it's not TOC stuff. I think it's stuff that complements TOC very well. Now, someone here was from Finland, so I got told this by a Finnish person, and it was a joke about Finnish people, and it was very, very humble and self-aware. Uh, so I hope that's what I was told it was. I hope it's okay if someone repeats it who isn't Finnish. How can you tell the difference between an introverted Finn and an extroverted Finn? The extroverted Finn looks at your shoes when he's talking to you. So apparently Finnish people are very more, well, you can pick it up from that, right? Okay, so now I like that. The Finnish person told me that. I thought it was absolutely hilarious and very clever. And it's kind of how I think that is part of the attitude of the theory of constraints. It kind of leans into it is that we like to look at the whole system. We like to look at the future. We kind of like to look up and out and around us and looking for opportunities. It's maybe something if you think of the original book. He's one of I think it maybe was the second edition that came out. By the way, talking of coastline problem, early version of the goal, late version of the goal, it grew and it grew and it grew by about 100 and 120 pages. I don't think the essence of it really changed. Um, where was I? I was insulting Finnish people. Um, yeah, so we like the goal. The goal was saying, "Hey, what's your goal?" And like for a business, it was to make money. And so that moved you away from thinking about cost, and efficiency, up to making money. In the goal, uh, there were bits where it was definitely in the Goal movie. I don't know if it was in the Goal book. I can't remember. Where Alex and his wife Julie, in the most cringeworthy moment I've ever seen in any corporate training, said that they must spend some time figuring out what their personal goal was in their marriage. Lovely idea. Didn't quite go down with a whole bunch of engineers when I worked at General Electric, kind of, but But the goal, it lifts us up and it makes us think about the big picture. And if you think about the goal of a business as Ellie defined it, it was lifting it up to what are we trying to achieve? Make money. But it was now and in the future. So there was this big looking out. So you can't do that if you're spending all your time looking at shoes. Okay. So that for me is a big part of the see that growth and abundance here. Just watch here how I animated that. It's not very impressive, but it took me 5 minutes, so I hope you'll all appreciate it. Look at that. Phew. Right. Okay, now you think that was cool. Watch this bit. So we've got growth and abundance. I reckon that's kind of it lifts up. That's kind of what we're chasing. It could be making more money for a business. It could be helping more orphans. It could be treating more patients in your hospital. It could be improving the education of your kids at school. Lots and lots of things. But we want to grow and we want to have this attitude of abundance. And then what we want to do, see a little jet plane there. So we're going to go along. I'm going to keep climbing this ladder. Then something's going to happen, which is that we're going to hit a brick wall. So this is an S curve here. It's really useful for illustrating the idea of inflection points. But we're going to hit this point here, and one of three things is going to happen. One is that we could continue up that growth and abundance curve if we figure out how to jump over the brick wall. What may well happen is that we plateau, keep going in the same direction. What may also well happen is that we plummet, especially if our competitors are busy jumping over their brick walls and they're racing ahead of us. So this is just the growth curve here. And what we're trying to do is we're trying this generic, wonderful TOC question is we know what our goal is, what's stopping us from getting there, and we're trying to figure out what's stopping us from getting there. What is the brick wall? And once we've done that, we can continue on. But then this curve will start again. And life is just a series of S curves and inflection points. And then one day they stop and well, you're gone. But otherwise, it's just this curve of it's like a sine curve where it goes up and down, but it's always in a upward direction until one day it's not. Okay. Now you may be familiar with that curve. Ellie Goldratt had something in one of his things where he had the red and green curve. And I don't know if they were the same color. I may well have swapped the colors. Green for me is good, like a traffic light for go. Red is not so good, it's stop. You may, if you're familiar with Andy Grove, who was the leader of Intel, in his second book, I think it was, Only the Paranoid Survive. He started off with an S curve, and he said, if you don't jump over whatever it is, you'll die. So it's just it's a good simple little model for growth. But our little secret weapon is that we are looking up and out, and we're not looking at our shoes. We're looking and going, what's stopping us to keep growing? And there are a bunch of different things. And they got like just general name, lots of names. There could be things in your head. There could be a physical thing like a bottleneck. There could be some policy. There could be some government rule. It could be that there's a massive water that you have to cross on a boat to get there. It could be all sorts of things, but they go along. There's a bunch of synonyms here that I've put together, and they probably all have different meanings. But we've got constraint. Now, the reason I put the other meanings here is constraint, even though I've been doing this stuff for nearly, I guess, nearly 30 years, um, constraint isn't a word that actually it feels concrete to my head. And it's just other people seem to have grown up with a bigger vocabulary than I have. Limitation, that feels a little bit more real. If you wanted to, you can go into Google Translate and you can go from put constraint in as English and then go select some other languages, find out what the equivalent is, and switch it back, and it will their word translates back into English as limitation or more likely restriction. So restriction's a really good word. There's a restriction, a brick wall. There's a blocker. There's an obstacle. So we're just looking here, finding these words, or there's a bottleneck. And I think it's really important with this stuff, and I'm probably belaboring this a bit too much, but bottleneck has two meanings. It has the general meaning that us geeky people who've read these wonderful books, we've learned definitions of them. We think of the Herbie in the factory, and then there's the everyday version, which is a blocker. Okay, so but for me, thinking about this jetitude, this attitude that we have, is about growth and figuring out what's blocking us. And then I think this is a belief that we all pick up from doing this, which is that at any given time, there are very few brick walls, but most of them, unless they're really obvious, you've already jumped over them or walked around them. Most of them are actually really good at hiding. And that's where these tools that we have come in. Right. Now, I'm just going to do a little bit more wordplay here. So you might think Jetitude, there's this kind of uplifting, looking out, big picture, walking on the street, looking at the sunshine, listening to the birds, keeping an eye out so you don't get run over by a cyclist. And we've got these big, green, lovely words like abundance, optimism, looking up and out. And we've got the throughput world, which would be the financial version from Ellie, where we focus on making money and earning more money rather than cost. But then we've got the opposite of those, which is words like scarcity. So we've got an abundance mindset, a scarcity mindset. Doesn't sound so nice. We've got optimism and we've got pessimism. We've got looking up and out, and then we've got looking down and inward. And then we've got the cost world. Now, I just want to point both of these out. I know the green stuff is lovely and thrilling and it gets us focused on achieving things, but we don't want to miss the stuff that's at the bottom because those things are often like the superpowers. Like if you think of like the ambitious target table that we're going to look at, if you're only optimistic about an ambitious target, you're going to miss all of the wonderful fuel of listing out obstacles that help you achieve it. So being pessimistic is really wonderful, but actually having a little bit of both of these is actually really healthy. But I think we are better to, sorry, no, a better way of putting this is I think we tend to be wired as people mostly not to do both. We tend to do one or the other. And I think the superpower comes from doing both. Okay. So it's not the theory of growth, it's the theory of limitations. So we do both though. We've got to have both in our mind. Right. Okay, now I'm not going to tell you all about bottlenecks here, but if anyone would like a copy of my books, just email me, LinkedIn me. Don't pop it in the messages here because I will probably miss it. And you're very welcome to have this here. The bottleneck rules is all about just a very, very simple version of. Actually, it's quite advanced. But I've kind of simplified the language and just focused in on bottlenecks. And lots of people use it all around the world. I'm pretty sure it's my bestseller. The Little Bottleneck Detective book is actually very deceptively advanced uh, theory constraints, business management, but it reads like a little kid's detective novel. And if you would like to learn more about bottlenecks and managing businesses, just ping me. Um, so the jetitude, the attitude that goes with this is that we grow by finding the bottleneck. And actually, if you look at the bottleneck detective, you almost find the recurring pattern as we grow by finding the cue, whether we can see it or not, and then finding the bottleneck. But I'm just going to show you a few examples. And over time, if there's interest in this, I'll continue doing more of this stuff, because I would really just love more and more people to learn about this. I'm actually not doing this directly for money. Just to clarify that, I'm just doing this because I really, really want to do this, and I just find it fascinating. That I find it fascinating that people would actually spend some time listening to me. Actually, anyway, moving on. So remember this one here, this little picture. There I am there by that little blue dot. You see the black arrow there that's pointing to a pit. And it's actually got a river. It's got a stream running down there, and it's weird. I didn't notice the stream on there, but that stream comes up from the hills behind us, and then it runs out, and then it hits the sea. And I don't know, they must have pipes or something for some reason. Actually, no, I know what it is. When the tide's really low, you can actually see that stream. It runs out through the estuary there. The reason I've put this here is that about 15 years ago, long before we bought this house, the pipe at that spot there was about half or a third of the size it is now. And then one day, the tides got really, 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 really super high, and there was a really, really, really big storm behind us, which sent a lot of water suddenly gushing down through that light sort of little purple stream that's running out into the sea there. And the water hit a bottleneck, a narrow part of the pipe, right where the tide was. It couldn't go out, and it didn't stop coming down, so it all pushed back. And we're about a kilometre away from it, and it flooded our house and a whole lot of other houses around us. Okay, so nowadays, much bigger pipes, they've cleaned everything out, and they're really, really keen for that not to happen again. But that was a bottleneck in action. And I have learned so much about bottlenecks by not by spotting the real world ones. Here's another one you may have seen. I'm sure you've all seen this one on the telly a few years ago, um, when the Suez Canal got squished, and you could imagine there was suddenly that became a bottleneck because canoes could get past, but all the other ships either had to go through south of Africa or they all queued up outside, and the entire global distribution system ground to a halt because of one quite big ship that went slightly sideways. Okay, so bottlenecks are really, really important. And being able to spot them in your personal life and work as a 101 level, which is what all that most people need, is an extraordinary skill to have. And the only reason most people don't have it is because they don't know about it. And then when you point it out, they go, oh, yeah, of course, obvious. Okay, right. So that's bottlenecks. Choke point Charlie. I love that name. Now, this for me, I'm sure this would be my 29th year since I read the goal. And I know there are people on the call who go, ha, beginner. Um, but it was only a few months ago that I actually really, really just nailed this down, that the problem with bottlenecks in businesses is not that they're bottlenecks that are there, it's that we try and run our businesses faster than the bottlenecks. And it's like this kid here with an 8-year-old running downhill as fast as you can. But you're running faster than your legs can keep up, and you stumble, and I'm sure you can all remember flying forward down a hill. Uh, but if you ran at the speed that your legs could cope with, you would have actually got further. So it's not the bottlenecks, the slowest part of our businesses, which cause us all the problems. It's that we try and run them faster, which is why the way we improve this is we do two things. We slow down our businesses a little bit so that we can find our bottlenecks, and then we figure out how to make our legs run faster. Okay. Now, I hope because this has got a little picture of a kid here that this doesn't seem like child's play, because that for me, when I realized after all those years that the problem wasn't the bottleneck, because the bottlenecks are actually, once you find them, that's how you grow. It was that we always try and run faster than the bottleneck. I sort of slap myself on the head and go, it's so obvious now. Okay, right. Genius 101. Now, I'm sure that many of you have seen clouds. Many of you, I'm sure, have also never used them. Or many of you have thought, they're such a great idea. They're amazing. They're absolutely fantastic. But you've tried and you've found them too tricky. So I'm not going to share here how I do clouds, but I would love for you to have a copy of this book, which will take you through the thinking. I do a very 101 version of clouds to start with. If you've seen the gold wrap version, they're on their side. I put them facing this way, and for some reason, for a lot of people, that seems to make them easier. I don't quite know why. I've got friends at one of my big companies that I consult with has spent millions on training their staff how to do clouds and do assumptions. I did assumptions once in 2003, and I've never had to do assumptions to do a cloud ever since. So my book sort of shows you the thinking of it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do the assumptions. If you find them useful, you should. But if you want like a 101 version, drawing out the cloud and getting the shape around it is almost always enough to solve your cloud problems. and you'll come up with genius solutions that will feel genius for about 15 seconds. And then you go, oh, that was so obvious. Now that I've seen it, why didn't I think of that before? And you'll feel stupid. So that's like your reward. So I'm not going to teach it here, but if you want a copy, email me, LinkedIn me, and I'll send you a copy. The most useful bit is actually to try doing them. Um, but what I will tell you is the very first time I used clouds with another person, it was in Sheffield in England in 2007, and I had known about them probably for 6, 7, 8 years at that stage. And I'd never been brave enough. I'd use them a little bit myself. And then I rather cleverly didn't try to be an expert in it, although the lady that I was helping thought I was. We just drove over. And so we walked over to a whiteboard and I said, oh, tell me about the problem that you've got here. She goes, well, and she goes, just, on the one hand, tell me this, and there's another thing that you're trying to do that is kind of like the opposite. And she spilled out this stuff. And I go, oh, what do you get out of each of these? And this was like the C and B boxes on here. And she goes, this and this. And then you go, and she looks and goes, oh, I've never realized that that was a problem I had. It's so obvious. And then she looks at me and I say, have you thought of doing that? She goes, no, but I could do this instead. And she solved a problem. And like about 2 days later, she bumped into me and she said, I have been haunted by that problem for 3 or 4 years, and I have no idea how to solve it. And it was so easy. You are a genius. And yet I probably by that stage had no idea what the problem was she was talking about. So the process helps you look like a genius to other people and for yourself for about 15 seconds. Okay. This one, I will tell you a little story about this one. The prerequisite tree, if you've done the theory of constraints, it just makes my head go boom, not in a good way. I've tried it and I just go, I do not like this. And I am very lazy. And if I don't like something, I don't do it. So I've never used them. I just go, oh, and then I learned the shortcut version. Oh, by the way, with the clouds, one of the wonderful experiences of my life was when I did for Vicky Maben, who taught theory of constraints at the business school at Wellington University. I did some of her teaching one year. And in her material, she said, there's two ways to do clouds. One is to do this easy way, which actually turns out to be exactly what I do. Draw the cloud out and then go, oh, how do we get the best of both worlds? And the other way is to go through and rigorously define your assumptions. And she said to me that most of the time she did the easy way. So it's not just me making stuff up. This version here is the prerequisite tree, kind of like the thinking behind it. But it's much easier. All you do is you come up with something that's ambitious and you go, oh, I can't do that, but I'd really like to. So just think here, you go, something I'd really like to do, that's growth. I'm looking up and out, I'd really like to do that. And then you look and you go, oh, but I can't do it. And then you go, what's stopping me doing it? And what's stopping me, if you were to just repeat those over and over and over again, 10 times a day, it will allow you, it just frames you to list out what's stopping you. And most of the time, we think there are 100 different things that are too difficult to solve. When we go, so like, if I'll give you the example here. A guy I was coaching, him and his boss over in, he was at a government department. Actually, I can say he was with the Inland Revenue in New Zealand, the IRS, the the Revenue and Customs equivalent here. Uh, and we sat down, and he had decided he was going to leave his job and he wanted to go and live in Scotland. That's great. And then I looked at him and I realized that he wasn't 26, which would be very easy for him to do with working visas and stuff. He was 52 at that age, the same age as me. And I go, oh, okay. So um, I assumed that he must be able to work there legally. Now, I'm telling you that because it turns out he wasn't. So we went through this process. I said, oh, great, good. What's stopping you? And lists out, he goes, oh, well, I'd have to sell my house or put it up for rent. Oh, okay. That sounds, write it down. Is that relatively easy to do? Yep. So he goes, a tick next to it. My wife would need to find a job over there. I'd need to find a job over there. She lists out all of these things that were practical, and all of them were just like, oh, that's just stuff I have to do. But I'm glad I've got a list of them now. And he says, but I've got this problem that I can't work there legally because I don't have any citizenship or anything. So that became the ambitious target, the one obstacle he had to focus on. If there were 10 or 12 things he'd listed out, they were all easy compared to this. So, as it turned out, he went to the head of the Inland Revenue, who knew the head of the equivalent in Scotland, and said, hey, I reckon it'd be really good if we did an interdepartmental secondment exchange thing and learn from each other. And she was genuine about that. And then it turned out that he effectively had a job offer and then they couldn't make it work. So she contacted the equivalent in Ireland. They made it work and he was able to go overseas. Now, this is all obvious, like all of these things when you hear it. But at the time, for him, it was like, he said, oh, I'm so stupid. I never realized that's the only thing that mattered. And I was busy worrying about everything else. So the ambitious target table, just that question, what's stopping us, it just brings out magic. But like those coffees that you get with all sorts of stuff in, one of them will be the equivalent of your caffeine, the espresso that you're really looking for. Most of them will just be, oh, I can sort them out later. Business as usual. Right. Now, I don't have any diagram on this, but I'm just going to tell you how I work with people because I've discovered that it's an incredibly effective way of helping people, really, really, really clever people. But for years, I kept it secret because it wasn't the proper way of doing things. Um, and so I kept it. I've always been rough around the edges compared to your properly besuited Deloitte's consultants say. There's a continuum. I'm at the other end, but I've found that this method of working with people um, just really works well. Um, so say it was a mentoring situation, and I had set up to meet someone once a week. First thing we would do is we set in. By the way, this isn't an advert. I'm not trying to do that, but it just we set up something for 90 minutes, and so the first bit is we'll probably only take 60 minutes, but if we need the 90, it would be shame if we finished early. So do you see there's a little bit of TOC thinking in there? We'll put a nice buffer in it, but we'll just try and frame it so that we don't have Parkinson's law just filling all the time. And then I go that, and the way we'll work is we'll sit down, we'll have a little bit of chat about what we did in the weekend, what's going on, and then we'll chat until we both find something that feels really, really, really a bit gnarly and a bit tricky, and you don't know how to sort it out. And normally, if it was an hour long, it'll take us 45 to 50 minutes to get there. But once we got there, and we've narrowed it down to that one brick wall, the one limitation, the one bottleneck, the one obstacle, the one thing that's causing you huge and huge and huge amounts of stress, once we've narrowed it down to that, we won't try and fix it. What we'll try and do is we'll figure out one or two things that you can do that will make it either 20% better or 20% less worse. And that's it. And if you can just think of this as just a rotating, we're just trying to find the one thing, and then we're just going to go, oh, okay. It's like the one thing that's actually stopping me at the moment. So it's that stopping question. You go, what is it? And then we narrow it down. And in any given week, we might not actually get the absolutely topmost one thing, but it will be in the top two or three. And then we'll make it a bit better. And then next week, almost always we come back and go, I only had to just do this a little bit. I didn't have to fix it entirely. 20% better make a huge difference. And now the loveliest thing about this, like, you remember I said I was lazy, is that All I have to do is sit down and talk and listen. Actually, it's not lazy. It's really, really hard work to listen empathetically and then just gently, not sitting down drawing current reality trees. Sometimes we'll do a 2 by 2 matrix, just searching around for the one thing that just feels like, oh, if we could just grab hold of that there, if we could just grab hold of it and then just look at it a bit more closely and get a bit of a shape of it and untangle it, we can probably make it 20% better or 20% less worse. And that's almost always what it takes. If I had been clever, I would have turned a circle here with 3 bits to it, made up a name for each third, and made them little arrows that made it look like a really professional um, Deloitte process diagram there. And everyone would go, "Wow, that's amazing." But the reality of it is it's that simple. You sit down and you just chat until you find the one thing that's stopping the person, and then you repeat. And it's really, really, really important here that you don't try and fix that one thing. You just try and make it a bit better or a bit less worse. And it almost always goes away. You've probably all heard that advice on cleaning. If you've got a spare room and you need to clean it, and they say, why don't you go in and just spend 5 minutes? And for some reason, the homework that they get is like doing that 5 minutes. They go away, they do the 20%, and either it goes away or they've made so much progress, they then go another 20% because it turned out to be really, really easy. Okay, so that is everyday evolution. Now, I'm going to go through this quickly, but I like this because it's a play on words, and I think it's actually really the stuff I've talked about so far, very left brain. And I imagine most of us here are very left brain, excellent sort of uh, scientific engineering kind of minds. I used to be, but and I genuinely I feel a bit awkward saying this because I'm a computer scientist and I was on a call yesterday with one of my clients who's going through some really difficult stuff, and he at the end of the call he said to me, "Oh, Clark, you're like my professional psychiatrist." So there's something about I think maybe it's age, and I think it's also in particular learning how to do clouds that has got me to the point. See you, Bruce. I'm quite good at dealing with people now. So, but these are I think 4 things here that have helped me get there. So I want to share them because if you're familiar with TOC, you'll know of drum buffer rope. And the drum sets the rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. I think there's another bit here that also sets the rhythm, which is the heartbeat. And what I've found is that and I was like this in the early days, a lot of people who are doing TOC love it for the mechanistic brilliance of it. Okay, we just love that. But without the heart, the heartbeat of a human, um, it can be kind of, if I'm mixing my metaphors and stuff, it's kind of can be quite half-assed, and it doesn't work if you take into account that you're dealing with people. So I just want to show you 3 books here that I would recommend. 2 of them are old, been around for a long time. The Made to Stick is my second favorite book ever. It's about how to package ideas up and make them simple and sticky and easy for people to care about and understand. I like that, Zach. TLC beats TOC every time. There you go. That's actually pretty true. That they're good partners at least. Crucial Conversations for me in my early 30s. I read that and it helped me figure out how to take difficult conversations and make them much nicer and easier to have. I would sincerely say that without that book, my life would have gone in a very, very difficult direction. But it kind of taught me over time how to have more difficult conversations with people. And you can't help people and you can't make improvements if you're fighting with them. You might think you are, but all you're doing is arguing and you're not winning. If you can talk to them and then use clouds or even cloud thinking, it can make a huge, huge difference if you can actually have nice grown-up conversations that feel like you're working together. And simple marketing for smart people is by Billy Broas. And I've paid Billy a lot of money and not as a favor to me, but he featured me as his kind of like one of his or maybe his only kind of case study in this book. Uh, but despite me being in there, it's really about simple marketing for smart people. And for me, I think like an engineer, but to think about how to sell ideas and to simplify them, and to sell yourself, especially if you're a clever person, we all suffer big time from the curse of knowledge. So we know so much. It's like we've got the coastline, every little bit of it. We've gone through and we've measured it with a 30 centimeter ruler, and we've got it all in our heads. And then when people go, "Oh, what's the beach like?" Rather than you saying, "Oh, it's really lovely at high tide, in the middle of summer, and there's beautiful swimming," we say, "Oh, well, actually, it's 10,361 centimeters long, and you'll find this, and the high tide is here." I'm being silly, but the way that we all tend to communicate as clever people, is about the details. We're almost looking downward and inward. This is a really, really wonderful little book, even if you're not trying to sell yourself or a product, just for thinking about the outside, um, yeah, the way of looking outside. Right, I'm nearly at the finish here. And there's one other word that I stumbled across, and it comes from people that do design school stuff, and it's co-creation. And it's kind of become kind of like I have some of my clients on the call there, and they're probably going, "Oh, with your co-creation." It's about getting people together and solving problems together and together creating things. So it's like collaboration, communication, all those lovely cooperation, all those words that were on Sesame Street, all thrown into one idea when you're in the office and you collaboratively problem solve. So that, if I were to scroll back up, I actually deliberately kept it um, separate, but the jetitude, the just enough TOC attitude, I have seen a lot of people who've done TOC stuff and are really, really good at it, but they haven't done it collaboratively and it just fails. Um, so that's like a very binary thing, zero or one. But if you can actually have conversations with people and co-create solutions, uh, it's a lot more fun and it really brings out the clever. Okay, so now I'm just going to do this. This is, I think, this third to last slide. I worked with a guy, he was a program manager. That was about 10, 12 years ago. And I come in and help them sort out a lot of agile stuff. And he said that they had consultants come in before and do all sorts of things. And he just had this saying that kind of reminds me a lot of the stuff that was in TOC. And I don't mean this disrespectfully because I think it was I love TOC. I just think it's a bit big and complicated for most people. He said those guys came in and they promised us the moon on a stick, and all we got was the stick. Moon on a stick. So I just want to end with that because I would really like my ambitious target with this is to see if people, you all on the call here, other people are just interested in this idea of just using jet to leave a tiny little dent in the universe. We're not like talking about Ellie Goldratt, trying to teach the world to think. We're just trying to, or to, sell massive, multi-million dollar consulting gigs and stuff. Just to use jet to leave a little tiny dent in the universe. And I suppose maybe this is where I think we've got 28 minutes left. And I hope I got the time right in this one. The last session I did a couple of weeks ago, it was about delivering big agile projects on time. And I put 60 minutes into Zoom and I thought it was 90 minutes. So I finished really late. But I wonder if we might perhaps just talk about this, just have a little co-creation, see what people think. And just really finally here, my Substack, um, there's a home for it there. If you look in the one, two, three, four, five, yeah, we got home, notes, chat, and then jet. So there's a little part of that there. It's kind of like within the newsletter in Substack, you can choose to subscribe to everything or just different sections of it. So there are three sections at the moment. There's a home one, which is everything. There's just enough TOC, and then there's stack the deck, which is the on time aggressive stuff. So if you're interested, I'll send out a link that the recording will get uploaded there. And if you're not already on it and you want to see more of this stuff, just when you go there, just click subscribe. And if you don't like lots of stuff, because I write about more than this, just figure out how to just subscribe to the just enough, just to the jet section of the Substack. Right. Hi. I'm going to stop sharing.